would request Dr. Venkat to go ahead.
Jai Sai Ram. Thank you very much, dear brother. And I hope you all had a nice break. I will pick up where we left off. So we had looked into this conundrum of trying to connect I with we, that we are all one, to experience that, not just say that, but to experience that. How to experience that unity, that is very, very essential. Sometimes we are touched by something, some events, and our experience of that will help us in our journey to understanding the equivalence of all of us. So that's one path, and the other path. So, as I was saying before, you can try and build something in the world that we are in, or you can go straight and focus on the Brahman and let your mind dwell there as much as possible. And your mind will pull you out of Brahman. That's what its job is. So it's going to do that, and whether you succumb to it or not is the story of how to overcome addictions. The neurotransmitters are exactly the same. So there's been work done on this academically to understand illusions and our attraction to those illusions, and the neurotransmitters involved in that versus addictions such as gambling or alcohol or tobacco and so on. So we have to get out of this and show no mercy in the process, absolutely no mercy to your mind. So I wanted to, so there were two Mahavakyas we did before, Pragyanam Brahma and Aham Brahmasmi. And we will cover the other two Mahavakyas, Tattvamasi and I am Atman Brahman. So these are quite important. And after when we cover these, I will, I think there was a request also towards the end to give you some experiences, personal experiences with Swami. I have always maintained that there's a difference between an event and an experience. Events which will obviously make us happy and excite us, and we talk about it to others, or make us sad and depress us, whichever way it goes. Events stop at that point. But experiences are those events that transform us. It is that transformation that makes an event into an experience. So, there have been a lot of events of interactions with Swami, but very few have obviously become experiences that have changed my life and guided me. The experiences of others, or what may be an event for someone else, may be an experience for me. And I will give you an example of that as well. So I'm going to tell you a hodgepodge of some of my own experiences and how they help transform me in my focus. My goal is very, very highly focused. It is to understand and dwell more and more on the Brahman. That I can't change that. So that's been there for decades, and slowly I'm working at that. But these experiences Swami has designed has helped me in that process. Some of these experiences are very, very personal. Personal, in which Swami was personally involved. And for obvious reasons, I don't think it's something that needs to be shared. But there are some which are general, and I'll give you, they give glimpses of Swami's divinity. So there's one where we opened a new gastroenterology unit in the Sathya Hospital, super specialty hospital in Prashantigram. And at that time, we were working pretty hard. There's a group of doctors, and two of them were gastroenterologists from the US. Excuse me. And we were setting up things. We had an exhibition as well as the opening of the new facility. And we were doing this late into the night. We were going past midnight. Nobody else was in the hospital except for our group, and we were setting up things. The next morning, we had a patient lined up. And as you know, those of you who have undergone GI procedures, you don't eat or drink. You're basically very hungry. You wait for this procedure to be finished. So we're working past midnight. We're setting up things in a poster board for an exhibition that we wanted to show Swami. And so at that odd hour in the night, the hospital doors are shut. The gate is closed. And the doors that lead you into the corridors of the hospital are also shut. And this young boy suddenly shows up in the area where we are putting up the posters. And, he comes to me first, and then he says, he looks at one of the posters, points to it, and it's a poster of the gut of your intestines. And he looks at it and he says, in good English, he says, "Sir, do you know how long this is?" And, that's the wrong end of the body for me. So I said, no, I don't know really, but I can maybe direct you to, we have two experts on this in this field, and maybe I can direct you there. And I started explaining to him about the gut, and he had no interest in that. He just said, so you don't know how long this is, how big the gut? So I said, no, I don't know. He said, okay. So then he went off to the other two guys and he asked them, and they said about 20 feet, small and large intestines. And then this boy wandered around, looked at other pictures, and we really didn't want him there. We were so busy. And then he asked more questions, and people were telling him, please, let us do this. We want to finish this because Swami is coming tomorrow morning, and we have to start the surgery tomorrow morning. So anyway, so this guy then disappeared. He just left. He was gone. Right? So next morning, I'm going to share the screen briefly. Okay, so next morning Swami comes, and we show Swami, explain to him about the GI procedures that are done, gastroenterology procedures. So that is me without the beard and more hair. So we were explaining to Swami through a video. So I had a video there. As you can see, this is a picture of the large intestine in blue, and inside is the small intestines. And this is a colonoscope that is taken into the colon. And I was explaining to Swami why it is done, how it is done. He very patiently listened to it. And then he looked at me and he said, you are a neurosurgeon, right? I said, yes, Swami, with your grace, I'm a neurosurgeon. And then he said, why are you telling me about the belly? And I didn't have an answer at all. And it put me in my place immediately that, much as we think we know, we are just dabbling at the surface of things that don't concern us. But I was helping the other doctors, so that's how I got involved with this. So then he went to other parts of the exhibition, and he came to this part. This is the part where that picture is of the large intestine, small intestine, where the boy had asked the question last night, the night before. So he asked Dr. Chandrachari, how big is this gut? And so, we thought we had all the answers, and especially yesterday the question was asked and we had two of our experts tell us how big it was. So she very proudly said, 20 or whatever number she put on feet, so many feet. And look at the face, look at his face, it's that naughty surprise. And he looks at her and says, no. And it is, so many feet, and he gives a different number. So, and that was it. After that, he lost interest in this whole process, and he, went away from this exhibition. We had so many other exhibits to show him. But look at our monkey mind. So then, at that point, we all gathered, looked at each other, and said, "Let's Google this." So we Googled it, and of course we were terribly wrong, and Swami was 100% right. So I think the reason I'm saying this is two reasons. One is that this question of how we are connected. Some strange guy comes in, and our mind is not even alerted to, wait a minute, how can this guy be here at this time? The gate is locked, the doors to the hospital are locked, he's not a Sevadal. Who is he and why is he here and how did he get in here? Who, why, and how? We didn't ask any of those questions. We were busy shooing him away, and in fact, we didn't give him a proper answer. The next day, Swami showed us that that's the question that we ought to have answered properly. And that no matter who we see, we should always keep in mind that there is some connection to Swami for that person. My way of thinking about it is not that, people think like this. In the hospitals, we do that. Oh, I see Swami in every patient. It's not that the patient is wearing a robe and that's physical. That's not the way we see Swami. At least that's not the way I see Swami. That's not the way Swami wants us to see him. What he wants us to see is how each individual is motivated by an inner Atma. That inner Atma is the same in all of us. And that's where the connection comes from. So how he motivates somebody to ask a question, to have a thought, to perform an action, all those are how he shows us his omnipresence. And that's how we realize that he is everywhere. And that's how we realize that we are one. Now, this is an important part of understanding that oneness. It begins with this. It begins with accepting and having faith in the belief that God is in all of us, that He is one in you and in me, and it is instantaneous. The thoughts I have has the ability to affect you, no matter what the distance, because distance is a figment of our imagination. Time is a figment of our imagination. So thought is also a figment of imagination, but what makes that thought happen is not a figment of the imagination. That is the Kena. That is the Kena Upanishad I mentioned to you, the story. And that is what Swami is. That is what the Brahman is. What makes the thought happen. What creates this Maya, what creates this illusion that we're having of separateness. We don't have to force ourselves to say, no, 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 we are one, we are one, we are not separate, we are not separate, we are one, we are one. We just have to keep saying no. When we see that separateness, we have to say, that's not me. You know, they say, deham nohu nohu. This body is not me, this body is not me. That body is not you, that body is not you. Right? What we are is that Brahman, which becomes oneness. And so just keep denying it. Keep denying. And that's, you know, as I said before, you have to destroy your mind. You got to keep denying. It will keep pulling you back. And you have to say, when it pulls you back, whether this is real or not, whether this is something that takes me away from the one reality of Brahman or not. That's the key. We often think, why does God not do this or that? You know, people, I'm sure all of you have been asked, if Sai Baba is God, then why is there poverty, and why is there suffering, and why is there such and such? Of course, it is true that all this can be changed by God. The question is not about why. If we are trying to understand God rather than understand ourselves, then there is a problem. That is a Dvaita model. That is something where I am different from God, I am different from you. Let me try to understand you, let me try to understand God. That is wrong to begin with. That premise is wrong. That premise is illusionary. And so the premise is different. The premise is one where we see that we are all God. Several years ago, with Swami's permission, I was working with Mother Teresa, and I first went to Puttaparthi and asked Swami if I can go, and then went there to Calcutta. And at that time, I mentioned to Mother that it's so touching and wonderful and inspiring that she's so compassionate. And she looked at me, with big eyes and said, Venkat, it's not compassion. And she pulled me up the stairs there's a little room which is like a chapel for her. So from the breakfast area, I sat there during breakfast. Then we went up the stairs, and when the flight of stairs turns, there's a statue of Jesus. She went up the stairs with me and she said, that is Jesus. And then somebody was coming down the stairs and she said, that is Jesus. And then pointed to someone else and said, that is Jesus. Don't you see that? It's not about compassion, it is about Jesus. Her true vision and feeling and faith and how she conducts her life was based on the premise that we are one. To be able to deviate from that one way or the other takes the strength of a mind. Only your mind can take you away from God. No one else can take you away from God. So if we are not becoming one with all those around us and seeing the futility of Dvaita, seeing the futility of the world as it is, then we are denying our identity. We are denying what is true. Remember, we talked in the morning about the dream states, and this is an acceptance of the dream states when we deny Brahman, when we deny who we are. So the Tattvamasi is also from Chandogya Upanishad of Samaveda, and in that there is there's a story of a fellow called Shvetaketu, and he goes to his father because he feels that he has learned everything. He knows a lot. He spent quite some time with learning all these things, and he comes back and he says, I know what Brahman is, or I know who I am. And the father says, really? And do you know all this? Come with me. The father takes him and shows him what is happening around. This is a tree, that is a cow, this is a forest. That is you, Shvetaketu. You know, he takes him throughout. Look at the sky. Look at the stars. Look how beautiful the sky is. How many stars there are. How vast the sky is. That, Shvetaketu, is you. Tat tvam asi, Shvetaketu. That what Father, at every one of these verses, it ends with Tat Satyam, Tadatman, Tattvam Asi, Shvetaketu. That means this is the truth, this is your Atma, that you are, Shvetaketu. And he takes him somewhere else, and he points to the glory of the world. At the same time, at the incomprehensible greatness of the universe, and says that Satyam, Tadatman, Tattvamasi, Shvetaketu. Keeps on saying this. So in the Chandogya Upanishad, in that chapter 6, 9 times he says Tattvamasi, 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 again and again and again. In the same tenor, in our lives, we should be doing that. It's okay to look at beauty of the nature and at this world and at your own situation in this world. But keep reminding yourself about who you are. That is the truth. That's Satyam. That is you, your Atma, Tadatman. Tat Tvam Asi. You are that Brahman. Not the manifestation of Brahman, not the creation of Brahman, but Brahman itself. Because the creation disappears. It's not here to stay. Okay, I see people dying, patients who die for no fault of theirs. A little baby gets cancer, and how do you explain it? And you just have to say, what is behind that? Where is God in all of this? It is not through despair that we find God, but through finding beauty we find God. There is beauty in everything. We cannot say that God is only joy. God is also death. God is also suffering. God is also pain. And that is the beauty of God. If we don't see that, if we don't see two sides of the coin, we are never going to see the beauty of Brahman. So in the pleasures of life, we should see God, just as in the sorrows of life, we should find God. Not as a shelter during sorrows, but in a true, heartfelt search for beauty. The diamond hidden in the cow dung is diamond still. That in sorrows, when we find God, it is the same beauty of God that we find the way we find diamond in a jewelry shop. Pleasure, where we find God, is no different from the God we find in pain. And so that is the thrust of Tattvamasi, that Brahman is all there is, that nothing else exists. When we acknowledge the existence of others, when we acknowledge the existence of something other than Brahman, we deny the existence that much. By the same proportion, we deny the existence of Brahman. You can't have it both ways. So it's a, in mathematics, it's like a fraction. It's we call it linear combination. So the more you take, more of a bite you take out of Brahman and recognize the state you're in and focus on that, the less of Brahman you're seeing. And the more you go here, the less of this you'll see. And what is the meaning of less of this you see? And Ramana Maharishi has said that beautifully. It means that you realize the futility and the illusory power of this. Why do you have that sorrow? That's the question that drives everyone to find an answer. Why? Why is this? There is another Upanishad, Shvetasvatara Upanishad. And it begins with this important questions. Why? Why is this? Why do we have this? Why were we created? Why is there a beginning? Why is there an end? And so in answering these questions, we find out eventually we find out that these questions, which seemed very important, are not so important, because they're questions about that which is not real. They're questions about that which we are not. And so we come back to focus on the Brahman, on the reality, and keep on letting your mind stay there. When you find that when you go away from that, you just pull yourself back to Brahman. Then all of the suffering, you don't react to it. Equanimity comes from that. It doesn't come from staying in this world, going through pain and suffering and saying, no, I shouldn't feel it. Oh God, help me, I shouldn't feel it. God, help me out of this grief. Help me out of this suffering. Because He has given you all the tools to come out of it. God will help you. In fact, God has already helped you by giving you the tools. You're keeping the tools and saying, build this for me, and you have the wrenches and the screwdrivers and everything in your hands. So the important tool is to recognize the Brahman as reality, and only the Brahman as reality. Then your mind is dwelling there. Your body may be here, and you could be doing things, and things could be happening, and truly you will see how the Brahman controls everything around you. We all have had stories about how events happen, and these are surprising events in your lives, and these events, you shouldn't walk away from it saying, my prayer worked, or God is with me. You should walk away saying, I am God. Here is proof that I am God. Not God is with me. God is me. That is the proof you need. That is the evidence you need in this world that is around us. So the Tattvam Asi Mahavakya, the third one. So the first one you're appreciating and saying, oh, all that is Brahman, Pragyanam Brahma, right? Everything is Brahman. Then you say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am also Brahman. And then you're connecting the two and saying, Tattvam Asi, that is me. Okay, the beauty of all of that is me. So this is how the Mahavakyas come around and help us with understanding our place in this universe. And it's true that the universe is beautiful. It's also treacherous in every way. Yesterday, I'm in Southern California. Last night we had an earthquake, 4.5 or 4.6. As you know, there's massive fires right outside. In the night, you can see the fires in the hills. It can be treacherous. It can be beautiful too. There's beautiful ocean out there. And in the winter, if I go another 1 hour in another direction, there's beautiful mountains and skiing. There's beauty all around me. There's also treachery all around me. That is the nature of nature. That's not just nature, that is the nature of nature. Let it do its job, and let us do our job. Our job is to get to Brahman. That is our job. If the entanglement is what takes us out of our path towards Brahman. So I want to give you another little story. It's an experience because, as I said, some events turn out to be transformative in your life and change your thinking. You go through pain, but the end result of that, as Swami says, is to help us go to Him. That should be our path. And the path is difficult. It is strewn with thorns, but it's not a joyride, but it is a ride that will definitely give you joy at the end. None other can do that. This world cannot, and that is the problem. That is the weakness of this world, and that is the power of Brahman. So here is one. In fact, I'm going to say this because the previous morning session somebody asked for experiences. So I told you about the GI unit that we inaugurated, but I'll give you another example. So how Swami, the cause and effect that we talked about, that we think we are the cause, and the effect happens right in front of our eyes. If you think that, it will be that. That which you think is that what you will see, and that is what you will be. Yad bhavam tad bhavati. So you believe that you are this, you will be this. You will get every evidence to prove that you are this. Stay not with this beautiful world. Just pass through this world on your way to Brahman. That's the way I look at this world. But if you stay here as the cause, then you'll see all the problems coming about. So, we often have medical camps. We used to have pre-COVID. We used to have twice a year in Prashanthi Nilayam itself. Some of you may have seen it, and when we do there, we have a beautiful routine. In the morning, we chant prayers and then come to the patients, and we think of the patients as God, and we even say today we saw 1,000 gods, 1,000 swamis, and we helped 1,000 swamis, and so on and so forth. These are words, just words. But then the question is, what are we actually doing? What are we feeling? What are we thinking? What are we experiencing? Right? So at the end of every medical camp, Swami used to come and talk to us, and he would, we'd show him, say how many patients and how many boys, how many girls, how many male, female, how many children, so on and so forth. But one of these occasions, we ran out of a medication, and our supplies were from Hyderabad. They would have to be shipped in, and for the moment we didn't, and we had patients lined up. All we could do was give them vibhuti. And anyway, we give vibhuti to the patients after seeing them, and we give them the medications and always give vibhuti of Swami. Now, I want to be very clear when I say this. I'm a very evidence-based trained physician and surgeon, and I don't believe in non-evidence-based medicine. And so it's very, very important. This vibhuti is being given at the end of however we treat them in the regular way as doctors, and we want Swami to be with them and bless them. And so that's the idea, and we would give them. But we ran out of this medication. So anyway, at the end, when Swami saw our team, and this was mentioned, that we ran out of medication, and Swami said, once you give vibhuti to the patient, that patient is mine. I take care of the patient. He's not yours. However, so what is the meaning of this? So there were lots more said, but the meaning of this one sentence is that our belief in the cause and effect, I understand how that runs. I know pharmacology. I know neuroscience. I know medicine. I know how the cause and the effect, how they're connected to each other. So give this medication for such and such illness, or do such and such procedure for such and such problem, and it should help. We are wrong. We are wrong. The cause and the effect is not the way we think it is. If we think it's that way, we'll believe it's that way. Sometimes we'll say it works, and sometimes it doesn't. We change the medication, change the procedure. But where is the cause? In the morning I talked about the cause of all causes. In Sutra Vahini, Swami talks about it, the cause of all causes. That it actually comes from there. And it's, in Agamemnon, the beautiful, I'm paraphrasing it, but it is drop by drop the pain becomes worse until by the awful grace of God I realize who I am. The grace of God is awful. The grace of God is painful. That's what Agamemnon said in it. He says, we find that we are not the doers. And do you want to learn that the hard way? Or do you want to start with faith in that? That's your choice. I asked Swami once about this, about free will. And obviously what Swami says applies, it's to me directly. He answered the question, but whether it applies to others, I cannot say that. But to me, it was very clear what he said. He said very clearly about free will. I said, Swami, what is my free will? And he said, your only free will. You decide, do you have free will or not? Then he made some vibhuti. But you see how, for me, it's transformative. This is an experience. It's just one sentence, but it's an experience. Because, is there free will? Is there no free will? Is it this, that? You can keep struggling and going into this mental gymnastics. But the true free will, at least for me, is to decide, do I have free will or not? Is it God, the doer, or am I the doer? If I want to believe that I am the doer, then everything I see will happen as if I'm the doer. If I keep reminding myself, no, this is wrong, this is wrong, no, this is wrong, this is wrong. God is the doer, God is the doer. Swami, you are the doer. My mind, pull my mind towards Brahman. You keep doing that, you'll find, whoa, what's going on? Something is defying the laws of causality on earth. We call them miracles, and they begin to see more and more of them. Because you believe you're not the cause. You believe you're not the doer. And if you look at all of the Vedic literature, the essence is just 4 words. Brahman Satyam Jagat Mithya. That means Brahman is truth, the world is false, illusion. That's it. 4 words. And everything goes around that to try and reinforce. Why? Because we simply will not believe these 4 words. We can say it, but we will not believe it. We are trained not to believe it from childhood. Those of you who are parents would have seen little children grow up and how your child learned things. The senses and the experiences from the senses is what makes and confirms what this world is all about. It gives you an identity. Your experiences and your perception give you an identity. I am this body. See, I can touch myself. I am solid. This water is liquid. So you create knowledge from your experiences of this world. And your mind then says, yes, this is it, this is it. It's like Pinocchio, the story there where the guy takes Pinocchio away and entices him with candies and all the things that attract him. More and more reinforcing that this is fun, this is the world that is fun. And lo and behold, after some time, boom, it crashes. Because the world cannot be continuous fun. That's the nature of this world. Swami gives a beautiful example. Again, so experience. This experience came to me by watching Swami. Okay, that had nothing to do with my personal interview. This was on a video. And Swami gives this beautiful example. He says, you're in this town and you're hungry, so you look around and you find there are 2 restaurants. Okay, One restaurant has a board, and in that board it says non-vegetarian restaurant. The other one says pure vegetarian restaurant. Okay. So you go to the pure vegetarian restaurant inside and you sit down, and the waiter comes to you and says, "What would you like, sir?" And you say, "Well, I would like a bowl of hot mutton soup or chicken soup." And the guy says, "What? This is a pure vegetarian restaurant. What are you asking me?" And you say, "What? I need that. I came into the restaurant. That's what I like. I want that. I like it." And the guy says, "Sir, look outside. Did you read the board? It says very clearly, pure vegetarian restaurant. We can't give you this." And then Swami continues with this example that this world has both suffering and non-suffering. That is the nature of this world. If you set yourself the task of your life to remove suffering, it simply won't work. I've had this discussion with Mother Teresa as well. That's not what your goal should be, because the nature of the world is not going to change. But what we do instead is to find peace where there is no peace. And how do you do that? You find the source of what is causing agitation. You find the source of what is causing sorrow. That is what Shakyamuni did when he became the Buddha, Siddhartha. We're all trying to do that. We're not, Siddhartha means you've become that. You haven't Siddha, you've become that? No, he became. In fact, another occasion, Swami told my son in front of all of us, he said, another occasion, he said, "What's your name?" He said, "Siddhartha." And Swami said, "No, not Siddhartha, you're Siddharthi." And then he explained. So the difference is, Siddharthi means you're working your way. It's like Vidyarthi, you're working your way to become knowledgeable, Siddharth, okay, self-realized. You're not self-realized right now unless you know, at least for him, unless you know that you are Brahman. Then you wouldn't be taking birth. So for all of us, this attachment to this world needs to go. And we all have our place, and it's our first block in the second step. What's the second? So the morning one, we talked about I equivalence with we. And for that, I mentioned there are two things, mamakara and ahamkara, we've got to get rid of, which is the doership and the ego. Ego, not the angry pride ego, but the attachment to the body. So that's I to we. And the second, this afternoon's theme is from God, which is He, to I am. And that comes about by understanding that there is nothing beyond Brahman, Tattvamasi, Brahman Satyam, Jagat Mithya, that this is all false, that is the only truth. And that the falsehood is always going to be up and down. Our goal is to try and find our way to God. And you find your way to God by your mind. The free will is turn the mind Godward. I give you the example of key in the morning, turn your mind Godward or turn your mind towards the world. That's your choice. Swami told me very clearly, that's your free will. You decide whether you are the doer living in this world or you are God. You choose. I can be no more emphatic about this, and the experiences that I'm telling you about have certainly had an impact in every field. And when we, when we are, the more you are towards Brahman, the less of these karmic consequences come to you. and the less of karma you will see. And you will see yourself changing. You will see yourself and your reaction changing. Karma comes from where? Swami has said that in a discourse as well. It is not your action, it is your reaction. The action may follow a reaction. You get angry and then do something. But it is the anger, that's the source of the karma. So when you are with Brahman most of the time, this will not happen. So you'll find you're a changed person. You're not having certain identifications with this world that you had before. You're not asking the same questions anymore. You know, when you are in advanced AP calculus, you're not asking the fundamentals of calculus. You've gone beyond that. So you won't ask the same questions that you're asking when you're believing that you live in this world and you are this body. Once you realize that you are Brahman and you focus more and more and more on Brahman and live there, then you'll see the difference. Those questions become moot. I want to give you another example as well. Dr. Harima, who's Dr. Reddy's wife, she's a pediatrician, and you know, when the kids were young, you know, she would take care of many things, and he also had a busy practice. He would also take care of them, but you know, she would also have to do some cooking, and there's so much work. But he could focus on God and the work of the Sai organization and so on. And so at one point, she actually asked Swami that, you know, I'm not doing enough in my quest to be with God, to dwell on God. I'm so tied up with this world. And Swami said, no, and she said, look at my husband, he's spending time on God, on God's work. And Swami said, wait, everything can be made into God. And you cut vegetables, think you're cutting the ties that bind you to this world. When you're making the chapatis and rolling the dough and flattening it, think about how you're spreading love around the world, because that love is the love of Brahman that you're spreading. How you radiate your joy when you keep contemplating on God while you do your work, that confirms to others through your life what they should be doing. It inspires others. You know the story of Brother Lawrence, right? He was a Carmelite monk in the 16th century. He was working in a restaurant, and the famous lines, he wrote these letters. In one of the letters, he says, amidst the noise and clutter, that's the place he's working, right? The kitchen. Amidst the noise and clutter, I feel exactly the same as if I'm kneeling in front of the Holy Sacrament. So there's all this noise and clutter going on. Do this dishes. Hey, this order, table number so-and-so. Cook this thing. What's going on? The milk is boiling. Blah, 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 blah. But he feels at all times that he's kneeling in front. He has that serenity of thought, of mind. Ask yourself, do you have that? If you don't have the serenity of mind, you have your goal set already, which is to aim for that. If you already have the serenity of mind, then that's good for you. But if not, that is a goal to have. And that's what Brother Lawrence was saying. And what Swami said to Dr. Haima is exactly that. And because once you do that, then you are in the realm of cause lying with God, effect being in this world. That changes everything. The laws of karma changes. In fact, another example I can give you, there was something that happened here, again in the family of Dr. Reddy, there's something that happened here in the US, and at that time he told he told one of his family members, it must have been all the it's okay if it didn't go the way we wanted to, because it's our karma. And because of karma, this happens. We often say that, it's my karma, so I'll live with it. And so anyway, so then several months later, they went to Puttaparthi and Swami talked to them. And at that time, Swami saw them, Swami saw the whole family and said, "You said this, that it was karma that made this happen." Wrong, completely wrong. Because if I want it, and if you are with me, this karma can be changed like a mountain of cotton in which I put a matchstick. It will completely be burnt down to ashes. We call it God's grace. We say that that is God's grace, but then it asks the question of how to obtain that grace. And the answer to that is dwell in the one truth of Brahman. That is all there is. If I had, whether I have 2 + 2 4 hours, or whether I have 2 minutes, I've been saying, or 4 minutes, I've been saying exactly the same thing throughout. You'd have noticed. Brahma Satyam Jagat Vidya. The only truth is Brahman. The world is false. That's why my reactions may be completely different from what you expect. Now, there is a there are many aphorisms. There are ways by which our mind can twist things so that we believe in the reality of this world. I can only say, if that happens, slowly pull your way out of it. Don't dig your way into a deeper hole. You're already in a hole. The fact that you've taken birth, you're in a hole. You start, like in golf, you start with a terrible handicap, human birth. It's the grace of God. Remember I said in the morning, Adi Shankara says it's the grace of God. But you start with negative scores. Okay, so now work your way out. Don't go more negative. Find out what makes things negative. How you dig yourself deeper into this hole you're in. Find out how you can do that. Get out of it. And the best way to come out of it is to dwell on God. Don't ask for God to come into your life. You go there. Take your mind out of this body and dwell on God. That's your free will. That's what he said, right? So, I want to end with the last Mahavakya. I am Atman Brahman. This I am is not I-A-M. It's not English. It is I am in Sanskrit. Each of these Mahavakyas have this story that we talked about, right? You first realize, Pragyanam Brahma, all of this is Brahman. And then you say, Aham Brahma, I'm also Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. Then you say, Tat Tvamasi, then you connect that with this. And I am Atma Brahman is saying that the Atman inside me is Brahman. So that which I see, Shveta Ketu, Tat Satyam, Tad Atman, Tat Tvamasi Shveta Ketu. His father tells him, that is you, the beauty of the universe is you. And now you're saying, whoop, the Atman is Brahman. That means that is Brahman, the Atman is Brahman. And my father said, that is you. And now you're saying that is Atman. That means I am Atman. That's how you get the idea of Advaita, these 4 Mahavakyas. And the last one actually ties everything together, right? Because you say, beauty of Brahman, and then you say, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. But you don't know what the I is. So then Chandogya Upanishad, they come and say, Tat Tvamasi, that beauty is all you, that is you, this is you, this is you, this is you. The 3 Vedas would have stopped us there. It's the 4th Veda, Atharva Veda, that I told you about in the morning, in the story of Dakshinamurti, which has this I am Atma Brahman. That is, I am that Atma inside me is Brahman. So and that power is what many of you would know the Rudram, and if you as you say the Rudram, as you chant the Rudram, internalize it, because it's the most beautiful Advaitic uh, uh, set of verses. In the Rudram, he essentially says, the mountain is me, is Shiva, the little molehill is Shiva, the biggest universe is Shiva, and the smallest atom is Shiva. The thief is Shiva. The murderer is Shiva. Hey, what's going on? And you think, really? But, it tells you the essence of Advaita, that all of that is Shiva. Why? I don't know, because asking why about something that does not exist is pulling me deeper into that which doesn't exist. That's why I dwell in the Brahman. And, things are different when you dwell in the Brahman. This world becomes different. The questions that you ask become different. And in his very first letter, Swami wrote to his brother, he said, how do I know who is my devotee? How do you know? You say you're devoted to God. Well, how does God know you're his devotee? Read that letter. It's there on our website in satyasai.org. If you go to Sathya Sai, and then it says his words, you go there, and then in related links you have, let me show it to you, because this is very, very important. The set of letters that Swami has written, because it's very easy to misinterpret Swami, and I want to show you something that's okay, so this is our website, and you go, this is called a mega menu, there's all these things. You go to Sathya Sai, his words, and this thing called Divine Nectar. So this book, Divine Nectar, but the letter I'm referring to is this one, Swami's letter to his brother. But that's also there in Divine Nectar. So this book, this is a PDF, and if you look at this book, it has some of these key discourses and letters. And May 17, 1968 is very important. It's a discourse, the World Conference. May 25th, 1947 is the letter to his brother. And in that letter, which is on page 13, this letter. So this is where he declares who he is and what his mission is. And in this, he says, what are the characteristics of somebody who is devoted to God? Okay? And this is very important. Please read. I would really urge you to read all of the discourses in this book. But I want to stress this one part of that letter where he says, those who are devoted to me will be the same in pain or pleasure, in suffering or in joy. Equanimity is the hallmark of devotion to God. Now, you may ask, how is that different from indifference? What is equanimity? What is indifference? So, we'll come to that. But for now, I want you to understand the importance. The Bhagavad Gita is full of the same thing. That, God says, and this is why I say it's very easy to misinterpret Swami. There's one part where, where Swami says, where Krishna says that I have no favorites. I have no likings or dislikes. I don't think somebody is a better person than another, or somebody's good or somebody's bad. I am beyond that. Okay? Then another part, you know what he says? He says, here are 35 qualities that make you dear to me. And he lists those 35 qualities, another part of the Gita. That seems to be a contradiction. So, actually, Dr. Reddy asked Swami this question about Swami. One side you say that, you have no likes, dislikes, and everybody is the same. On the other hand, he says, my favorite devotee is one who has these 35 qualities. What's this? So then Swami says, everything has what is called samayam and sandarbham. That means time and context. For the one who is already in Brahman, or who is reaching for Brahman as his goal, for that person, the path to the Brahman you take, I'm indifferent to that. I don't say this is my favorite or that is my favorite. And I know what you're trying to do, and as long as you're trying to do that, I love you, God says. We are all the same. Because you're going to reach me. You're all going to reach me, right? For the Advaitan, that's the thing. But for the Dvaitan who lives in this world, thinks the world is real, going through the pain and pleasure, then Swami says, okay, when then you have this 35 criteria. You better satisfy these 35 criteria because you believe this is real, live by the rules. Live by the spiritual rules, not by the rules of the world. Or, of course, you have to follow the laws of the land, or else you'll end up in jail. But the spiritual rules are different. When we get confused between spirituality and, because remember, spirituality by definition is that which takes you to Brahman. When we get confused between that and that which holds us in this world, then we are in deep trouble, because we will stay in this world never having the opportunity to go over to Brahman. And it's like the wolf in sheep's clothing. There are many ways to twist things around to say that this is real, that this world is real, and that certain things should, we do these things. This is my duty. This is how the husband should be towards the wife, or the wife should be towards the husband. There's one very clear instruction in the Bhagavad Gita. What is your primal duty? Your primal duty is to God. What does primal duty to God mean? It's the realization of God. If you abandon that realization goal, take up other duties, it's like me saying, I have such and such role in the Sathya organization, but hey, I also have to run this other thing, and so I will leave this and go there. Or many of you might have had this. We did this long ago. We had these study circles where we would say, here are 5 values. Contradiction among or between the values, right? Say there is righteous conduct, and then there is Sathya. Sometimes there's conflict between those two. There's prema and Sathya. There's conflict between those two. I want to be loving, but I have to deliver bad news. I want to be parents. It might have happened between you and your children 100 million times. Child says, I want that candy, and you say no. Or I want to go stand upside down in a roller coaster, and you say no. Right? Choice between love and duty. So we often face these situations, and that's what will happen in this world. But our duty, the primal duty, is to God. And that is the Advaitic way of looking at it. The non-Advaitic way is the other way. And it's not that one is better than the other. We can't compare the two, but let's not twist Swami's words around. So there is that and there is this. They're two different things. So when we look at the teachings of Swami in the world of Advaita, it is a reinforcement of the eons of Advaitic philosophy followed through all of the story. We may think Rama and Krishna are Dvaitic, but it is actually the essence of it is Advaita. Jesus himself has said that, I and my Lord are one. The Advaita is the running foundation upon which we build other things, because Samaya Sandarbham. We can't convince a bunch of people, Jesus cannot convince a bunch of followers who are anchored in the Dvaitic philosophy, that you and I are different. But I know today you have all come here with the theme that you want to know more about how to pursue you and I are one, that I am God and nothing but God. There's even a beautiful bhajan, but the next time you sing that bhajan, believe that bhajan. Don't just sing it. When you believe that bhajan, and when you want to make the effort to believe that bhajan and you sing, you will notice you'll sing beautifully. You will not go out of key. that is called bhava, which means there is synchrony between your thoughts and your words. So I will pause here for questions, and I really want to thank each and every one of you for this beautiful satsang, and I'm very, very grateful to Swami for giving me this opportunity. Jai Sai Ram. May Swami continue to bless all of you. If there are questions, I'll take them.
We have time, but let's just start. We have one question which, it is a long question from Mr. Gopal Rao from Boston Sai Center. One of the best talks I heard in my long academic career. I am impressed with the concept of understanding and faith. Objective science is limited to understanding. Classical physics is deterministic, observer independent. Adding faith observer creates reality, gives quantum physics. Things become probabilistic, cause and effect can break down. Miracles possible. The significant feature is every experimental result is explained and all the predictions are experimentally checked. The laptop, smartphone are all quantum gadgets. Even the quantum computer, ultra fast, practically instant, is demonstrated recently, works on the principle of entanglement ruled out in classical physics. God does play dice. Can we call QP, that is quantum physics, the science of contemporary spirituality? Interested to hear your comments.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's a long question. So I hope I cover all of it. If not, then please correct me at the end. As I said before, science and spirituality, I try not to mix one with the other. I think because the two are orthogonal to each other. The scientists in that group will understand what I mean. Orthogonal means they are independent of each other. You cannot use one to interpret or scale the other. And the reason is, as I said, the evolution of thought is different in spirituality. Starts with faith and then goes to experience, knowledge, and so on. And the evolution of experience in science is different. And that's why Swami has said in one of the discourses, science is for that science is something that is for the senses. That means evidence in the sense of laboratory is based on our senses. And believe me, I have a lab in India in IIT Madras. So, on one hand, I do that too, but my mind is somewhere else. So we do that, and physics has changed. That's the reason, because the evolution of knowledge and thought is different than in spirituality. Spirituality seeks to annihilate thought, while science seeks to grow and expand thought. Spirituality seeks to expand the love in therein, whereas science negates that. So the goal of a scientist and a spiritual seeker is orthogonal for those reasons. But when we think about how we proceed in these two to try and explain one in terms of the other, we will often fail. There will be difficulties. There was you can look in YouTube. My cousin, my first cousins, a lot of them are all physicists, and so one of them had a debate. So there was a debate held in national TV in India between Sadhguru, my cousin was a physicist, and this Ramakrishna Mission Swami I mentioned to you, Atma Priyananda, who is the dean of the university, Vivekananda University, who's a particle physicist, and my cousin is also a particle physicist, but he's a scientist, full scientist. So you can see there's one scientist, hardcore, world-renowned scientist, another person a scientist who became a Swamiji, and a third person, a Swamiji, but who's not well versed in the scriptures. He's experiential based. He admits that in the debate, that because the Ramakrishna Mission Swamiji Atma Priyananda is obviously very well versed in the scriptures. Plus, he's a physicist too. So they talk about how to reconcile these thoughts. There was another debate that I attended as an audience, not as a participant, but this was held in Caltech between hardcore scientists, physicists, and a physician who's become a spiritual person. So it failed. That debate was a horrendous failure because you just simply can't get the two sides to see each other's views or understand or genuinely reconcile. They're both trying hard. That's the way I see it, because I am not new to science, and I'm not new to spirituality either, but I really think I can't use one for the other. When we, and as I give you examples of Robert Millikan and Heisenberg as well, maybe we need to go much more to understand the universe before we can see the beauty of God. My purpose in studying physics or science or nature is to appreciate the beauty of God. As I said, the nature of nature is more beautiful than nature. And so the purpose in studying is to see that beauty. If I can churn out equations and get publications without seeing that beauty of God, it's meaningless to me. I would not publish such a paper. Not at this age, not at this in this time. Maybe when I was younger, it's important to get publications, I would do that. But now I wouldn't. It means nothing to me. If I can't see the play of God in nature, then that play that I'm seeing without seeing the play of God is meaningless. So nature and God does play a role in science. But as I said, go back to what I said. There's a curtain. There's divine, there's Brahman, and there is this world. Cause is in Brahman, effect is in this world. That will not change. That is Swami's exact words. That's the words of the Upanishads. That is the words of eons of scriptures in various religions, including Christianity. Now, but of course, the view of free will is different in today's Christianity compared to Christianity in the 2nd century. So, going from the divine as the cause to the effect over here is the way to see. Don't let your mind get distracted from that. I can, while I'm working in my lab, live here because I need to get the cause and effect over here in order to be able to find something of significance, to make some discoveries. I would stay here. But eventually, I do realize that the cause really is out there, the divine. And events that are these low probability, almost impossible events in our lives remind us often where the cause lies. Ramana Maharishi realized that for a long time. That's why he told his mother, after he was sitting up in the cave for a long time and his mother wanted him down. This is when he had disappeared as a young child. And finally his mother came up the mountain. Some of you may have walked up the mountain to that cave. It's a long walk. Last summer I was there again, and it's a walk that is strenuous. And this lady, elderly lady, went all the way up, and she said, "Come home." He didn't say anything, kept silent, and she begged, and he said, "No, it looks like, what kind of a spiritual guy is this? Where is his compassion? His mother is begging him to come down. And he wants to just sit there. And he's not even replying to her." And people started coming and telling him, "Please, sir, do something. Tell your mom." And then, so finally, and this is his famous line, I'm paraphrasing it. That which is destined to happen will happen no matter what you do to prevent it. And that which is destined not to happen will not happen no matter what you do to make it happen. And therefore, the best course of action is silence. And he lived his whole life like that. And that is the beauty. He lived his life in a way by which he had the opportunity to make the inquiry, who am I? Who is the real I? The power of Brahman. Because when you ask that question, you expose the weakness of the unreal. The unreal is afraid of one thing in you. You know, the unreal, which is this world. The world is afraid of one thing only. You can pray to God, oh, help me in this situation. You can pray. But there's only one thing that this world fears. That is the person who asks the question, who am I? Because when you find out who you are, everything disappears. That's the experience of Ramana Maharishi. And you should read about his life story. It's beautiful. He was very dear to Swami. In fact, his devotees were also dear. There's the beautiful story of one of the devotees of Ramana who came to see Swami, and an elderly person, and Swami told him about something he did when he was a child, when the devotee was a child, Ramana Maharishi's devotee was a child. And at that time, Swami wasn't even born. Sathya Sai Baba didn't exist. And he said, you did. So that it shows the Brahman is everywhere at all times. Time is not a factor, because time, the cause and effect that we see, is a slave of time. As long as it's a linear timeline, there is this cause and effect. But when we realize that time itself is unreal and it's a creation of our mind, then there is no time, there is no cause and effect. Not the way we think of it. Cause and effect can go this way. So, and this is what happened. So Swami was, the Rishi was stunned, because Swami called him by the name Ramana would call him. And then finally Swami gave him, this guy had done a yajna when he was a little child for Ganesha. And, you do that because then you get a vision of Ganesha. We never had. So Swami asked him, did you do this yajna? Yeah. Did you get a vision of? No, I didn't get a vision of Ganesha. Then Swami said, well, that's why you're here today. And then Swami showed his form as a gold Ganesha to this person. So, the power of Brahman is beyond the power of reason. That's why we can't compare the two, because science is based on that reason. Spirituality is not. So I'm not sure if I answered all of the questions in the long questions that you had, but the principles with which I would answer those questions are based in this. And of course, we can try to reconcile science with creation, and there are various ways to look at it. And based on your question, it looks like you're a physicist, so you know about string theory and about energy alone. Swami in many discourses has talked about that. And so there are obviously different ways to interpret things, but to reconcile science and spirituality, interpret one in terms of the other, gets us entangled. And you use the word quantum entanglement, no pun intended, but it does get us entangled with the mind dwelling on this world, which we don't want. So just ignore it and go there. It's like, we're all vegetarians, and your friend comes to you and says, why are you a vegetarian? And there was a time when I was young, I would say, well, blah, 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 these are the reasons. I try to argue, they argue back. Nothing is gained. Neither do they change, nor do I change. Nothing is gained, except negative energy is generated. Now I just keep quiet. This is what Ramana Maharishi says. Keep quiet. Focus on Brahman. That's your job. So that's how I would reconcile science with spirituality. I hope that has helped.
Sairam, one more thing which came to our mind, when we were speaking in the morning. Usually we are used to the fact that Brahman is the truth, ultimate truth. Even attachment to the body, there are untruth. But the way you projected today morning was Brahman is the truth, rest are non-existent. It's totally, different thinking. It's whatever we have been thinking, we have been discussing, is whatever you say today is totally different from what it is. Can you explain, how it's very difficult to say that you see the body here, but you say that it is non-existent. I understand that it is untruth, it is non-existent, it is not non-significant, but you say that it is non-existent. I somehow, I would like to explain if you can.
Sure, sure. It's that concept of dream, right? As we, if in that dream, like the Janaka story I said in the morning, you're in that dream, or the story of Zhuangzi, you're in a dream. In that dream, you feel everything. The EEG, electroencephalogram of your brain in REM sleep, is no different from that in your awake state. There, obviously, the neurotransmitters, there's one that cuts off at your brainstem so that you're paralyzed below, so you're not doing anything. So if you murder someone in your dream, you're not going to murder that person next to you in sleep. That motor movements are not there. And same thing with sensory. Your eyes are closed. You're getting no sensory inputs. You can dream in a soundproof room, dark, with your eyes closed. So there's no sensory input. There is no motor output. But the EEG is the waves, the predominance of beta waves is the same. So sorry, I don't know at what point I got muted. Can you guide me, Suresh?
Just 10 seconds, just the last 10 seconds.
Okay, sorry about that. So I was talking about how the dream works. So the electroencephalogram of a person in REM sleep and awake state is the same, except of course there's no input, no sensory inputs to the REM sleep guy, and no motor output to the REM sleep guy. The awake guy has both those, so he can take actions and can get input. So whatever is going on in that REM sleep is quite real to you. You will feel things there. You will feel pain. You will feel choking if somebody tries to strangulate you. You will feel that. And you wake up because, something in your body sends a signal. Sometimes, people who have this thing called sleep apnea, where their breathing arrests, right? And they may be even having a dream of dying, or a dream where somebody's choking them, but for some reason or the other, the breathing arrests. And you wake up, but that's a reflex in your body. When your blood carbon dioxide level goes above a certain level, you react to it. You have to take a breath. That's in fact one of the signs we look for to declare you brain dead or not. So there are mechanisms that wake us up, but if not, we are gone in a sleep state where things do look real. And that is why that question is asked, what makes you think this is not a dream compared to that? So you say, well, look, I've got a whole, I don't know how, I'm digressing here from spirituality, but since there are so many scientists here, I don't know if you've seen this, a lot of scientists are Trekkies, we used to call them. So they watched Star Trek. So there was the series Star Trek Next Generation. But the crux of it was that, this guy, the captain of the ship, so anyway, he lives an entire life. He meets this lady, grows up, meets this lady, marries her, they have a child, and then the planet they're in is threatened by the sun, which is going supernova, and then they have to get out of that planet, and he learns how to, and he's getting old, he's now got a beard, and he's building a rocket, and they put everybody in the rocket and they leave. Entire life. But you know what? It all happened in a matter of couple of minutes in the ship, where this captain's body had just become limp. And in that couple of minutes, this whole entire life he lived. I mean, that's a story. That is fiction. But your dream is not your fiction. Your dream is your reality of this body, of this mind. You have lived it. You look back at your own dreams, and sometimes you would have these dreams which are quite vivid and quite explicit. Something that gives you the impression this is not the dream, is time that you say, no, I can see photographs of my childhood. I've lived through so many, oh my God, that's 4 years ago. You see these pictures, you see your books, you see, you go through landmarks that mark time. It is time that confirms to you what is real. Because this touching and feeling pain will also be there in the dream world. Pain and pleasure are also there. They're also here. And, it's hard to say what is what. But let's look at it this way. Supposing I'm driving, okay, and I come to an intersection and the signal lights and the light turns red. What do? I stop, right? All of you would do that. Light turns green. What do? I go, right? Do I, at that point, when the light turns red, do I say, hey, wait a minute. Why is this red? There must be a signal that comes. There's a signal box on the sidewalk there. And there must be a timer. There must be a chip that detects traffic. And then it's sending, there's a gate that opens or closes. It comes through. There's a filter. There's electrons running through, coming to this light. And there's these colored things. And if it's LED, then colored LEDs. Oh, how do the LEDs work? Do I think all that? I don't. I just stop. It's red, I stop. It's green, I go. It's the same thing. There is a dream. This is not real. Now let's move on to that which is real. How do I say this is not real? What is the strength of conviction that makes me say, so you see, the mind brings us back to this world, entangles us in here, and we get caught. And we say, oh, no, maybe this is real. That's what the mind wants. And we have to tell ourselves, no, that is real. Do you ever ask yourself, tell me why that is real? We often ask ourselves, tell me why this is false. And that's what Swami says in Upanishad Vaini. He describes this debate in our mind. And he says, kill the mind. That means leave this, don't debate. Go by faith and everything will be fine. That's why faith comes first, I said in the morning. Now, the logic that I was trying to say is not to indulge you in logic about, why this can be unreal, about, birth, and so you're created from your father, parents, grandparents, and so on, and then Brahma. So all of that has to have the same characteristic of mortality versus immortality. So if you're immortal, you could not have come down that path because these are all mortals. Your body is dying, your body decomposes and you're gone. So how can you be created by that which is immortal? So there is something else beyond this body, something else beyond this world, because everything you see in the world is also destroyed. And so it's just a matter of time before our solar system also disappears. So time is the only thing that makes you believe that, oh, this is real. But leave time aside. This will all go. The universe is expanding. Our sun is growing. And whatever, right? So we know that which has been created is also destructible. But if that is who we are, this destructible unit called body, then we will have to concede to one point. And I don't want to indulge in logic and debate, but I'll just leave you with this thought. That there is some essence in you that surpasses this body. Why? Because without that essence, this body is dead. It's a bag of flesh. Your heart simply won't beat. Your brain EEG will be flat. You simply don't exist. There is something that makes this happen. Two cells that combine become an embryo and then grow, multiply. What is it that gives them the signal? How do you know, Mr. Cell, go here, become my finger? Mr. Cell, go here, go here. You become this finger, not this finger. This finger. Who on earth is giving this order? How can it happen? The miracle of life is so beautiful. There is a gene we can think of, that, when you're in that initial state of two cells and you multiply and start off, at least from the point of view of the nervous system, there is a gene. And there's a gene that tells, hey, look, imagine a brain. Our brains are so enormously complex. And each part of the brain, the cell is in a particular location. Some people, it doesn't work. There's a defect. And in those cases, the brain is good, but the good brain is in the wrong place. And it will give them a whole bunch of trouble in life. And in some cases, it doesn't develop properly. In some cases, the brain comes out when they're born. But all that is not there in you and me. Why? Who told it not to do that? How was that controlled? How is the cell to multiply? What's the stem cell? How does it know what to do? So, there are various kinds of genes and we have these ideas about it. But the primal question is that, can you explain the existence not of nature, but of the beauty of nature? That's why I call it the nature of nature. That is our life. That is the Atman. And that Atman is in everything that you see. Why is the tree having an Atman? Because it's so beautiful. How did that tree happen? You had a seed. From the seed, how on earth did it become this huge, the bark, and then there are branches and leaves, and that leaf is different from the other tree's leaf. The flower is different, the color is different. How? Who told it to be different? And so there is something, and when you remove that, so there are two things, right? You add it, it's like salt in sambar, right? You add it, it tastes something. You say this is good, that has come in, so this happens. I'm talking to you, I'm animated because of that Atman. Now you take the salt away, take the Atman away, what happens? Boom, I just drop down dead instantly. So the mind gets its animation and the ability to think because of the Atman that entered this body. And the very first thing the mind does in its job is to deny that Atman and to say that this world is real. You feel like telling the mind, hey, you, now you have to think carefully, who is the you? Who's talking to whom? You got to have your map very clear in this game. And you say, hey, you, who do you think you are? I can leave you and you'll die. You will cease to exist. There is no mind without life. Where does the mind go? What happens to the mind? There are so many theories, both scripturally and non-scripturally. So my way of thinking is simple, which is the more we try to rationalize this existence, and I'm glad in your question, you used three words. One was true, the other was untrue, and the third was false. And there are three different things. And there's a very famous theorem by Bertrand Russell and Whitehead, and later on by German philosopher Gödel. But the essence of that is, with everything that we have and all the logic and all the axioms and everything, there's always one thing that you can neither prove is true nor false. You can't. That's the limitation of the human mind. And there's a formal proof in logic, in philosophy. So you can look it up, and there are various versions of this theorem. There's a set theoretic version of it called the set of all sets, and the Russell and Whitehead is the easiest to read. So you can look it up, but the main thing is that our entanglement in this world creates nothing more than more entanglement. At some point we have to say, enough is enough, and we go towards Brahman. Because the beauty of that is being missed. We can see that beauty in nature. We can see that. If we don't see that, what is the nature that we're enjoying? It's recreation. It is not a divine action. Let us live our lives with every moment focused on the divine. That is mindfulness. Saira.
Thank you. There is one more question. Thank you, Brother Venkat. Where do you place free will on the scale of purity of consciousness versus the value of meditation, devotional singing, etc.?
I can understand value of free will with
Now,
devotional
where,
singing,
where do you
meditation.
place where do you place free will on the scale of purity of consciousness versus the value of meditation, devotional singing, etc.?
Okay, I have to fully understand the question to be able to address it. But maybe, I mean, it's definitely an important question, but I'm trying to figure out how. So free will, for me, as I said, Swami told me very clearly, it's just the only free will I have is to decide whether I have free will or not. So it stops there. So I can choose to say I have free will, then I live in this world and live by the cause and effect of this world and live by the happiness and sorrows of this world, and I live whatever way I live. Or I can choose to say that's my only free will, this world or that God. I can choose to say I am Brahman and all the four Mahavakyas and live by that and conduct my life accordingly, and always mindful of my true nature, always, which means my performance in this world will deteriorate. So obviously, I'm not going to be a bright and shining, outstanding intellectual person because my mind is hypothecated to God. So that's the free will. Now, there are other ways to reach the divine. And in fact, we think about bhakti yoga, jnana yoga. Now, mostly I've been talking about jnana yoga, but there is bhakti yoga. In fact, if you see the Lord's Prayer, Swami's prayer, that is also on our website, that is about these various yogas, each line. But the bhakti yoga, which is through our devotional singing, inspires in us certain feelings and bhava that I mentioned to you. So, for example, when you sing, I am God, I'm not different from God, then you should experience that. You should think about that. You should experience. Don't focus on, oh, is my voice going good and is my beat good and so on, and what are people thinking about me right now? Did I do a good job? Then you're not singing. You're croaking. Sing to God. Don't sing to the people, and sing thinking about the words in that song. Appreciate every line, every sentence, every word. That is bhava. So when you do that, you start getting that feeling. And I dare you to survive a song in full bhava without having tears in your eyes. Because those tears are tears of realization that you have been separate from Brahman by not thinking of Brahman. And suddenly you now think of him, just like your own child or your mother whom you have abandoned for a long time. So that's where the tears come from. So that is bhakti, the path of devotion. There you don't think about, oh, what should I think like this, and the science says this, and Veda says. You say, I don't know any of that. I just know I love God. Mirabai was like that. She loved God. That was her path to Brahman. And we know many people. I told you about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu last time. And there are many of the Nayanars who are like that. The Nayanars, these were Shiva devotees, and they are devotees who are full of bhakti. And now you can say, oh, is that just mean duality, non-duality, and so on? Don't think about anything. Just love God. Just love God. Right? 3 words. So that's the devotion part. And if you look at it, the SSIO has each of these. They have the study circles, which are the Jnana Marg. They have the bhajans and satsang, that is the devotion. Then you have the karma yoga, which is the service. Through service, and Swami has said that in many discourses, through service you can achieve that oneness of understanding. But then it's important how you do the service. See, each of this, just like it's important how you sing with the bhava, otherwise you're not going to get the benefits of that. The same thing with reading and jnana marga. It depends how you think when you read and how you reconcile your life and what you see and your experiences with what you read. and the importance of faith. In the bhakti, same thing, faith is in all of them, all four of them. So bhakti, there's faith, but it's important how you sing. And in karma yoga, in service, it's important how you serve. So then, do you just, okay, it's time to give sandwiches, and you make the sandwiches, and you give the sandwiches, you're watching a TV show while you're making it, or, what are you thinking about when you give that sandwich? The person who gets it, how much love do you give him at that moment? How much do you feel what he's going through, or he or she is going through? And why are you doing this? How does this fit into your overall? We can't judge either. Some people will take one pathway, some people will take another pathway. We can't say everyone should take the service pathway or everyone should take the bhakti pathway. No, that's why we have a menu. The SSIO is like a cafeteria. It's all there. So you take this dish, some people will take some other dish, some people just take dessert. So you can take what you want. But you can't judge another person taking one of you. We're all the same. It doesn't matter. I can be doing bhakti and singing beautiful bhajans, tearing over Swami that I'm missing, and living those bhajans as I sing them. But I may not come to a Sunday sandwich seva. Does that mean I'm any less? Because I'm not conducting myself the way I should. It's not the act of sandwich seva that matters as much as the bhava with which it is done. I can show more bhava here. I feel closer to God singing. Maybe that's how that person may think. So we cannot judge each other. But there are these paths. God, Swami in his infinite compassion has given us all these paths. And that's the way I would look at it. Now free will, whether free will lets you choose among these things is something different. For me, it's a simple definition. Whatever Swami told me, I accept. And that is, I have the free will to decide whether I have free will or not. And my decision is no. And I've seen evidence that no matter what I do, you can say it's bad luck, you can say it is probability, and you say, how can that happen? It's never happened. It's extremely low probability. We had a meeting last Saturday for SSIO senior officers. And so this was a global meeting, and there were quite a few people, about 200 odd people, up to the NCP level. So when it was my turn to give a talk, so I have a laptop. It's a MacBook Pro, latest. Technically, nothing can go wrong. This is like the guy who's the Titanic captain who said, only God, not even God can make it sink. Nothing could go wrong. I just rebooted my laptop in the morning before the meeting. It has 32 gigs of memory. It's got the 10th generation i7 Intel chip. It's got 2 terabyte SSD. I've got plugged in Ethernet, and the Ethernet speed spectrum is got here in Southern California is 1 gig. And I tested it with the UCLA. It was about 900. Download and upload is 40. I had the latest version of Zoom. Everything was good. How can it go wrong? Everybody started speaking one by one. Everybody's speech was good. I started speaking. Boom, it cuts me off. In the same house, somebody else is there. And they're also in this meeting, they're fine. 2 other people in the same house are in the same meeting, and their computers are fine. It's got to be my computer. How could it go wrong, right? So anyway, I know that there are times when there's nothing I can do. And there are times when I think I can do something. It is not me who's doing it. It is the thought that comes. Who gives me that thought? Kena, right? That's the Kena Upanishad. So in a way, I feel that there are many pathways to God. People who are in any of the pathways that they've chosen should pursue that pathway with the utmost sincerity. But part of that sincerity is not judging others who are in other paths, because we all lead to the same God. That is the beauty of Swami when he talks about equality of religions or equality of the way we think. It is just that we don't judge each other. If there is judgment, there cannot be equality. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. And one more, there was a question in the morning where the devotee was asked, can you, I mean, your journey with Sai, how was your journey with this one, with Sai? That was the question. And
Oh,
we might have touched some of the experiences, but still, I don't know whether you have anything more to add.
how much time is there?
We have total 10 minutes.
Okay. It's a long journey, so maybe I'll just compress it down. I came to Swami in 1980, as I mentioned to you. So I finished my undergraduate degree, and then I was a hardcore scientist, and I even worked in JPL for some time. So then I was studying in Caltech at that time, and my mother and my sister were ardent devotees of Swami, and I somehow had I had no faith at that time in who Swami was. Spirituality was dear to me, even at a very young age. My mother was very spiritual, and my mother had instilled that in me. And so, prayers and thinking about prayers, thinking about the words in the prayers, bhava, all these things my mother taught me at a very young age. But then I abandoned everything because there was something in me that made me very sad. So I just left it. I didn't want to be sad. And I was a very different guy, with these bell-bottom pants and sideburns, and so my mother and sister came to the U.S. and sister was doing her graduate work in mathematics here, and they said, "Where is Satya Sai Baba in Los Angeles?" And there was one center at that time, Sai Center. We found out. So, and I was a bachelor, so I said, "Okay." My mom was staying with my sister, and I said, "Okay, I'll drop you guys at the Sai Center during satsang time," which was a Hollywood Sai Center, it was called that time. So I'll drop you off at the Hollywood Sai Center, and I will go to Hare Krishna temple because you get free food. For a bachelor, free food is gold. That's worth a lot. So I said, I'll go to Hare Krishna temple and then come back and pick you up. And I kept doing this for some time until one day a lady in the Sai Center came out and said, "Why are you dropping your family here? Why don't you come in?" I said, "No." She said, "No, come in. You have to come in." And I was dropping them off. So I thought, okay, there goes my food. And I parked the car and got out. I was wearing shorts. And she looked at it and said, "No, you're not coming in like this." And I appreciated that. I admired that. She was very apologetic. I said, "No, please don't be apologetic. You represent a group of people, and I can't come and be a disruptor in that group. I'm better off, and the group is better off if I sit outside." And she said, "No, you go change and come." So the next week I changed, I came and I went. And it completely transformed me that time. And the very first satsang I attended at the Hollywood Center, there was this Caucasian guy who's got a wonderful voice, a beautiful voice, and he sang Ram Rahim Ko Bajne Wale, a beautiful voice. And I couldn't stop crying, and I was so embarrassed. I said, this is awful. So I got up and left the bhajan hall, went to the washroom, cleaned myself up, and then came back, sat down, started crying again. Then I got up and I said, "I don't want this." And I left this. And not only, my mother had set up an altar for me in my apartment. I took everything down because it made me very sad. It made me cry. So I took everything down. And took me a very long time. Took me several experiences that reminded me of the presence of divine in all our lives. But I viewed it as a presence of divine, never as I am divine. And eventually I went to Whitefield. And the very first time I saw Swami, I was stunned because I closed my eyes and Swami came and stood in front of me, and I didn't realize that. So his robe was touching me, and I didn't realize that. And suddenly I felt this, and I opened my eyes, and Swami was there. But it was a form that I had seen before. I just simply couldn't bear that experience. I just broke down and cried. And then Swami made some vibhuti and walked away. And anyway, at the end of darshan, I came out, and my mother asked me how I was doing. And she said, I saw Swami there with you. So anyway, and then, there were a few sort of medical experiences of people that Swami took me through to show as I said, the impotence of human efforts and the complete power of the divine. There's just no difference. There's nothing that could dispute the exhibition of divine power that he showed me one by one, these experiences, both in the medical field, with patients, and in my life. Then I slowly started coming to Swami back again, and I just couldn't stop. So every year I would come twice. Every time I came, I would have beautiful experiences with Swami. And so it's just a slow path. I came back to where I believed I was before. And I think it's, these jolts in our lives that make us realize who we are. It's sudden jolts. And we can sit and lament over those jolts. I talked for quite some, my daughter was a professor teaching mathematics in Israel, in Jerusalem, and then in Haifa. So I would go visit her quite often. So I would talk to people there. And obviously, the memories and rationalization of the atrocities that they have experienced is fresh in the minds of generations. And how do you rationalize the concept of a benevolent God when you see this, when you experience this? And how do these families cope with it? That by talking, I learned a lot. By talking, I learned about that's when I said the cause and effect. And the cause really is not on this side, not on the side of the world. If you want to think that way, you go ahead and think, and you'll see whether it happens or not. And, this Maya will be spinning. But the truth is that the cause is somewhere else with the divine. The effect is here. That's what Swami says, and that is really true. And that's what, we came to that conclusion jointly in the group of
Man is on the way.
Sai devotees.
How do you know?
His mom said man is on the way.
Sorry about that. The Sai devotees in Israel are so devoted, and it's beautiful talking to them as well. But even non-Sai devotees that I spoke with, I learned a lot from them. I think the people that we meet, that Swami allows us to meet or arranges for us to meet, we have to ensure that they transform our lives and our way of looking at lives. If we don't, then that meeting is a waste of time for us and for them. So every meeting should count. If it doesn't count, I won't go to that meeting. That's what I always do. If it can't transform me, even this right now, I would not go, because we would be wasting valuable time of our lives. We are not immortal. It is our Atma which is immortal. This body is not. And the Atma can leave this body anytime. The body doesn't give an eviction notice to the Atma. The Atma leaves. However you want to die, you die. You die in a trauma. I've seen that. You die of a heart attack when you had no other symptoms. I've seen that. You die of a stroke. I've seen that when you've been healthy otherwise. You die of a brain tumor. I've seen that when you're a young child. So there are no rules in this game. It just happens, and you can be next. We have to understand that. We can't continue living without understanding who God is. We cannot keep on living. If we keep on living judging others and bickering and fighting and leaving God and not spending time to be one with Brahman, we will die. This life is done. And, you know, I mentioned this earlier. There was a point, I was writing a book, which has come to a halt right now because of COVID, but there was a point I was writing a book, much of it is done. It was called Waiting for Death. It's not a bad, sad book as the title sounds, but it's about how we transform and change when we know that we are going to die. I've given diagnosis of death and expected life for those who have cancers. I operate on them and I tell them median survival is such and such. So the majority of people die in 6 weeks. 5 weeks happens. This guy's thinking, I'm going to die in 1 week. How does their life change? Have they become a different person? You know, when you have the luxury of thinking that you're immortal, you can fight, you can argue, you can live life the way you want, you can judge others, you can ignore Brahman. But when you know you're going to die in 1 week, see how you change. That's what I saw. And that's what I see in all my patients. I mean, I didn't want to bring this up because this is obviously not happy things, but I think it's important for us to understand our role in this universe, and that role is not what we think it is. It is to understand Brahman and to experience that Brahman. It is to ignore the deceptive wrath of this world. It is deceptive. It cloaks it as affection. It is not. It cloaks it as worthwhile. It is not. It is a waste because it's not real. Simply, it's not real. And I am not being a person who has given up on life. This is not giving up. This is understanding what is real. And if not now, it will happen later in all our lives. And when later? Because I may die tomorrow. I may die today. I told you there was an earthquake last night, and I'm prepared to let Suresh, and which I know you is shaking, I'm leaving by. So I think that we must live every minute, every moment, cognizant of Brahman and with our mind dwelling on the Brahman. That is true mindfulness. Not just mindfulness of what is going on around me. That is called focus. That's not mindfulness. People have misunderstood mindfulness. Mindfulness is mind full of God. That is mindfulness. That's for me. I can't advocate that to others, but for me, that is mindfulness. Saira.